Just going to call a special call to order, Ms. Bell. Tuesday, the 24th of July, 2007 at 5:40 p.m. Councilman Porter is present, Councilwoman Garner is present, Councilwoman Wallman, Vice Mayor Losner, Councilman Hodge, and Councilwoman Bell is present. Legislative matters, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, on your agenda is the contract for sale of the real property between the City of Homestead, Florida and A&H Commerce Park, LLC, authorizing the city manager to execute the contract for the sale of real property, authorizing the city manager to take all actions necessary to implement the contract for sale of real property, and to finalize and sign all documents necessary to complete the transaction, providing for an effective date. It's under tab 1.
I'll move it. Moved by Councilwoman Bell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Hodge. Any question on the contract? Any questions?
Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Kurt, I know in the analysis that the actual acreage surveyed was something a little bit less than the 100 that we all had been talking about. To make reference to an easement, is it an easement or is it a dedicated roadway?
Well, we call it an easement. No, there was no dedication that we found there. It's a roadway that borders, just for everybody's identification, there's a roadway that borders the west side of Contender property, and that roadway that goes in on that group of where Mr. Smith has bought, purchased right down that way where DEA is building. That was kind of an easement. We have water and sewer in there as well. But we made the easement for the roadway for DEA to get in into their property. Technically, at least as I was explaining, needed 2 ways in and or out either way. And that road was there, and then they're making the one that comes in off of Alex Munso Boulevard to come in. So
it just drew my attention because there's a big difference between an easement and a right-of-way. And if it's truly an easement, it's their property and has some value, but for setback purposes and so forth. So is it an easement or is it a dedicated right-of-way? I think it's 1.38 acres times $175,000 an acre is not insubstantial.
That's correct. Did you want to comment on that, John?
Yeah, John Kendrick, City Attorney, and it actually is an easement area. The roadway had already been built, and the easement is actually for some portion that's actually less than what the built-out roadway is. They would be able to develop certain parts of the property, but they would be having to maintain it so that the other properties on the southern side could exit out of it.
So are we deeding it to them?
Yes. Yes, the property is included in the property that is being deeded over to them in the purchase. But because they're not able to, destroy it, rip up the road, do what they want with it, they have to maintain it as a roadway.
I'm having trouble conceptualizing, though, that it doesn't have some value. Maybe not $175,000 an acre, but for calculation of gross build-out and setbacks and so forth.
Well, that was a point of discussion, I think, in the negotiations. We kicked that around quite a bit, even going out and measuring and maybe not using all of it. And this really, I think, worked out best for even all the other tenants that were there as well. And just yes, you're right. It's not a little bit of money, considering, but I think it worked out best for all the tenants that were there and the existing roadway that's been built there.
As a percentage of the entire deal, it's relatively an insignificant percentage. But $200,000+ is still $200,000+.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Apparently don't seem to be an issue.
I'm just glad to finally see this contract before us, Mayor.
Good, thank you,
Do you feel that you've come to the end of any negotiating strategy as far as that easement? I mean, do we dare? You're the one that's been working with them. I mean, do we dare go back?
Well, I think we've, once this is signed, there'll be a 90-day closing period, which you have outlined in there. But I think we've gone over pretty much back and forth. I mean, if you'll remember when we awarded the RFP, this is longer coming to you than I had anticipated. But, of course, 2 days after this, additional deposit of a significant amount comes in, and it becomes a hard deposit. That means it's subject to...
And just for the record, I mean, Kurt knows I've been calling him almost every other day, have they signed, because they kind of did this a little backwards. They did their due diligence before they actually, do you agree? they did their due diligence before they actually committed to the contract. So,
well, I think...
So I feel good now, because, I mean, they've already been through... much of the process, and they've completed it and they're satisfied with it. It bothered me that they didn't sign it when they were supposed to sign it. So I just hesitate to put a kink in anything right now, since we know that they've already been through their process.
Yeah, I think we're, like I said, we've addressed about everything I think that we know to address in there, and there were a few unusual issues that you have to deal with there that. I'm sure, there was an initial deposit of $50,000, and then there was a follow-up deposit 2 days after we signed this that's $800,000, so there's $850,000 at risk, and I guess they felt that, and of course, I'm on our side, but I understand what they're doing there. You want to make sure before you put, because the $850,000 becomes hard now, with, it has to be an exceptional scenario that the city does that causes that to go bad, kind of thing, and for them to be refunded. So when you have $850,000 at stake, they're basically, I'm sure they're, even though they know the property fairly well, once you get into it, there are a lot of loose ends that you needed to tie up, and
that's all.
Kind of where we were with this.
Thank you.
Well, let me join Councilwoman Bell and congratulating both sides for finally putting this issue to rest. I think for years we've been talking about the development of the Park of Commerce, and Mr. Manager, I know you've been looking forward to this for many, many years and serve all of us and serve the community. So I'm looking forward to the time when we'll have some groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings there at the Park of Commerce. I think it's going to have a tremendous economic impact for the people of the city of Homestead, and job creation is certainly one of our centerpieces of this whole Park of Commerce issue. So congratulations to both sides, and I look forward to the good work you guys are going to do out there in the coming months. So congratulations. Any other comments? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Bell? Yes. Councilwoman Garner? Yes. Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Losner?
Yes.
Councilman Porter?
Yes.
Councilwoman Waldman?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Yes, sir.
My name is Steve Smith, and we are on the adjacent property. And first of all, I would also like to add my congratulations to your...
Is your microphone on?
Maybe I'll do it.
There you go.
I'm Steve Smith. We just acquired the property, the other piece of property that was available in the park from Doug LLC. The name of our group, Ed, is HP Homestead Park LLC. So I'd like to add to your congratulations, yourself congratulations, if you will, our congratulations on completing a long and laborious process. We've actually participated in this process. I think Kurt and I have probably lost some hairs. I know I have over the course of probably 3 or 4 years. And I'd like to congratulate you guys for winning fair and square. And I think it's okay to use the word envious. I'm envious, and I'm looking forward to working both with the city and with the winners of the 100-acre RFP. One question I did have, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to slide in before you voted, but I doubt it'll make any difference. But the question that you asked, Mr. Losner, I happened to be working with our planners this morning. We've seen recently the name tag of the DEA, whatever, on that paved road, will we have the right, by your interpretation of whatever it is, maybe easement or whatever, will we have the unequivocal right to access that road from the 14.7 acres that we did as if it were a public right-of-way?
And that was the intent. It wasn't paid for. It was part of an easement and right away there, and that was the intent to give access to those adjoining properties to the east, as well as DEA really got that brought into question as we started. It really, in my mind, wasn't a question at the time, but I could see where they were going with it and where everybody was going with it. So that short answer, I guess I should give you is yes, you'll have access to that.
Super. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. Richard, 3B.
Before I move on, I just would like to thank John Kendrick of our office, Kurt and his staff, Gail Sirota, who has been at this for years. I can't believe she's not here, but John really got involved in it, and so, it's another very good team effort on the staff side, and I wanted to thank John for really digging into this and getting it done.
Thank you, John.
As well as the
you did a good job.
Lila and her crew from Holland and Knight. So,
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is William Albanaz, and I'd just like to express to you how happy we are and how excited we are to go forth with this new project, which will be beneficial not just to the city and to all of us. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
This next item is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Homestead, Miami-Dade County, Florida, providing a proposed tax millage for all properties real and personal in the City of Homestead, Florida, for the purpose of setting public hearing dates for approval and adoption of the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2007, ending September 30th, 2008.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved by Ms. Bell and second by Mr. Hodge. Let me ask a question on this. Why not accept the rollback rate, being that it's a requirement of the state?
Mayor, we can, and then I have my backup is Jan here. I'll try and answer that question. If I misspeak, Jan, jump in on me. You have really, I was going to say, you have three options here that we've outlined. Of course, and then for the public, we want them to understand, this is first the temporary, the first shot. We do this every year, setting the ad valorem rate. We usually set it higher than what it ends up being because it gives us some safety net, if we can use that, for unforeseen between the time we set it now and the time that we actually set the final rate. The current ad valorem rate is 6.25. And that was what was suggested. Go ahead and set it at 6.25. It's not going to be 6.25 at the end of the day unless, the sky's falling, some unusual happening. We also have the ability, if you want, to set it at the rollback rate, which still gives us some play in the event of an unexpected situation occurring between now and when we set the final rate. And that's about 9%. And it's in the bottom here. If you set it at the rollback rate, we're in the cities that have to do the rollback rate plus another 9% that we have to cut back. And that will be our final rate. That's what we're budgeting toward, is that number right there. It would take a 2/3 vote of the council to eat into that 9%, whether you did, it was 4 or 5 at the end of the day, instead of the full 9. It would take unanimous to stay at the 6.25 vote, according to how this ad valorem was set up. So you have the three choices there. We put in the 6.25. That's plenty of leeway for any unexpected, and we end up back at the more than likely the 9% deduction rollback rate, unless there's another issue. I would not go to that rate first. I would do a higher rate to give us that play in there.
Yeah, I have a question.
Ms. Warren?
It's so hard for the general public to understand. And you and I had a conversation today about I wanted the middle of the road. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to pass this tonight, we have to have a majority? Is that...
No, actually, the majority will set the initial trim rate, but if we wanted to go in anything above what the rollback rate minus 9% is, then you're going to have a two-thirds vote to do to have a millage that's more than the rollback rate minus 9%. You know?
Right.
And then if you wanted to go to our original 6.25 that we had before, it'd take a unanimous vote.
To go back.
To go back to the 6.25.
Right. The middle of the road, the millage rate of 5.6, I'm better, but I'm not completely better, so I apologize. Do you think we could live with that, the middle of the road? The middle one? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that's still giving us the 9%, right? If
we're budgeting. Right.
Yeah.
We're actually budgeting based on the 9% cut, so we generally, it's been our practice over the years to set the millage at the same amount that it was last year, just for the submission of the DR 420 to the county.
Well, I appreciate it, and I look at it two ways, because if we go for the middle of the road here, the middle rate, then we only need two-thirds of a vote if we came into a crisis and we had to do something.
That's correct.
So I tend
maybe I can help here. What you're doing tonight is, the way the state law is set up, and all of us have been through this a bunch of times, it's very, very complicated and very illogical. But what you're doing tonight is you're setting the maximum amount that you can levy as opposed to any real amount. And the reason that we encourage you to set something that's very safe is because in order to exceed what you do tonight, it is very expensive in terms of advertising. All sorts of special ads are required, and we do not want to be in that situation. So if there's any thought that you might have to go to this level, you should set it there. If you set the rollback rate, that's fine too. What the manager is telling you is that the state law mandates that other than having an extraordinary vote, we must go 9% less than the rollback rate. And the rollback rate for the public is what gives us the same amount of revenue that we had last year. That's what the rollback rate is. And so that, and what the state law requires us to do is to budget 9% less revenue than we had last year. If you don't want to go with that 9%, if you want to levy more taxes than the 9% left, then you need a two-thirds vote, but not tonight. Tonight you just need a majority vote to set basically the not to exceed number. And then as part of your normal budget process with public hearings, you'll set your actual millage, which should not exceed what you set tonight. So the question is how safe you want to be. And I know that there's public implications to this, but the safest thing to do is to set the same millage for last year. That's what we've traditionally done, knowing that you're not going to use that millage, but it's good to have, because then you don't have any chance of having to go through those special advertising requirements. But because she's budgeting 9% less than the rollback rate, you're probably safe also with the rollback rate. I don't know if I helped at all. That helped.
My comment for once, we need to move away from tradition and go with your budgeted rate.
Rollback rate.
That's my only comment. I mean, we budgeted at 5.1585, right? That's the budgeted number.
That's the target we're still
That's
working
the target we're setting. So if that's the case, let's go in faith and just go with the budgeted amount and not provide that confusion in the community.
So you're saying, Mayor, the millage rate of 5.1585, 91% of rollback rate?
That's what we're going to end up by the end of the budget year.
Mayor? we're going to end up there anyway. Well, according to state law, we're going to end up with 9% less than the rollback rate anyway. So if we're going to end up at the 5.165, you know, I mean, that is where we're going to end up. Because I know we're talking about, one thing I do want to say, and I'm okay with that, I really am, I think that's fine. But one thing I want to say is what we were doing here tonight is nothing extraordinary. Every single year it's the same process. You have your current ad valorem rate, you proceed from your current ad valorem rate, and you begin your negotiations to work downward on that. We've done it every year, and all it does is open up I call it the budget season, to begin the process of budgeting and crunching the numbers, and each department begins crunching their numbers and seeing where they can cut here and cut there. There will be cuts. We know that. There have to be. But according to state law, we're going to end up where we're going to end up. So it'll be a bit of a sacrifice to go from 6.25 down to 5.1. I mean, it's not 5.1, 5.16, right? Yeah, so 5.16. So I think that I'm okay with that. But we already have a motion on the floor to set it, so we can either defeat it or amend it.
That's for the 6.25?
Yeah, there's a first and a second for the 6.25. Any additional comment, Mr. Hodge?
What I would like to, I guess, get a clarification on is, this city is consistently over the last few years been lowering our millage rate when others has been increasing, and now that we are state regulated to lower our millage rate, we've been lowering it all the time. So really, logically, you think that our rollback rate would actually be higher than what our current rate is, because of we were higher in the last 3-4 years, and we've been consistently lowering it. So, just bring some clarification to, how do we get where we get because of...
You want me to take a stab at that?
I don't.
Well, we have been lowering the millage rate. We've never gone back to the rollback rate, and because of the growth that we've experienced and the increase in property values, plus the growth, I guess, our revenues have been higher, and that's helped us, because what people don't understand is that we've been lower, and there was a lot of catch-up we're doing, and the growth factor has caused us to have to add on personnel, mainly, police personnel is a good chunk of that, to service the new areas. So, even though we don't get any credit for what we've done in lowering our millage rate at all, because it really didn't go back to the rollback rate, and for the state, we were one of the cities penalized because we had realized a large, jump in our revenues, and without any consideration for where we were before, where we were behind, what we're to try to catch up, what citizens wanted us to do, and we never had the money to do, plus the new population out there serving, those communities and dealing with the growth. But no good deed goes unpunished anyway. We all know that. So it really didn't impact anything. Basically, we fell into I called it the good, the bad, and the ugly. We fell into the ugly category mainly because of our growth. And we have had a tremendous growth in our assessed values. It's just happened. I mean, we kind of rode that wave because it had nothing we had to do with it, but it was just the market cycle and everything that would happen. So,
Mayor, can I ask a question?
But things are tough now.
What would have been the consequences, Jan, if we had not lowered our millage over the last 4 or 5 years? Wouldn't the cuts have been more significant?
We would have felt them more, because we would have been used to spending all those dollars, but we didn't. We would have still had to cut 9%. 9% was the max.
Not unless they came up with new categories.
Yeah, especially for Homestead, 20%.
Hyper-growth.
Mr. Porter, then Mr. Vice Mayor.
Well, as the market corrects itself and the slump in housing, how does that affect the overall assessment of the community? We wouldn't see it in a year.
I don't think we're going to see it a year. Then, depending on what happens, we still got another year to face, with the referendum and what's chosen there by the public. But
The assessed value that we're going to apply this year is as of January 1st, 2007. So it sort of lags almost a year behind.
Okay. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, if the voters, take the super exemptions, it is what it is. We're going to address it through cutbacks in services, whatever those services are deemed by, this body or any other body in the future. I know we've always tried to err on the side of caution because I'm not going to say the hurricane word, but we've always had those trying events where $2-3 million worth of services have to go out to clean up after a mess, and you don't always have that money unless it's in the contingency, which it's where it comes from. But I think at the end of the day, everybody's just looking for the cuts, and at the end of the day, the cuts will be felt somewhere by the taxpayer depending upon what we have to do in the future. So it's almost like step up and take it on the chin and go ahead and deal with it. Maybe then when it comes time for, the referendum, maybe there's a little bit more of a understanding of impact or the repercussions or the unintended consequences of, of what we're doing or not doing. Thank you, Mayor.
Caution everybody to remember the windstorm where we got helped. We're still going to get help, I understand, but it hasn't arrived yet.
It's on the way.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, check in the mail.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Kurt, this gross taxable value of the $3.8 billion, is that pretty much set in stone?
That was from the county.
That's where, so those numbers are out, and that's what it's based upon. Subject to future homeowner and business owner having successful appeals before the, the special masters or the evaluation board. Based on the 9%, what's the actual impact between last year's general fund and this year? I mean, it's not. I don't believe it's in here because we're talking about what if. But
it really comes out to almost, Jan, I'll let you take that. Almost the same, I think, in terms of revenue to the city. It's almost the same as last year. Am I wrong? You're smiling at me. We're a little above.
Yeah, 1.7 million more than last year.
Oh, that's right. The last one came in. I forgot that. Yeah, 1.7 million above last year.
Okay. Now, assuming the referendum does not pass on the constitutional amendment, just so we begin to start thinking about next year, what are our caps going forward? I guess this coming budget year will be our new baseline. What was Part B of the legislation in dealing with future?
It's the same as we have this year, but they put in a CPI for personal income growth, and I imagine some growth figure also, I think.
And we won't know that until next July or August, whatever the CPI and personal income, what have you. And of course, CPI would have been a better monitor, and personal income, we may have a negative impact again year after year after year based on that. Do we have any thoughts about being more proactive on making sure that properties are properly assessed? I can tell you, in my practice, I see several times a week properties that appear to be grossly undervalued. I saw one this week where a house, for example, sold after all of the hurricanes a couple of years ago for, let's say, $300,000, but for some reason had an assessment of down in the twos before the homestead was even taken into account. And if you have enough of those situations where they're just flat out wrong on, I mean, sale price is sale price.
Right.
Are we going to begin to look at any of that? I think that we're...
A couple of things. Well, one thing...
Yeah, we'll do our part if the county needs to do its part.
One, we have to depend on the county as to when they will do that kind of an audit, if you will, and if we know of any any situations, we certainly bring it to the county's attention. But what we're working on right now that I think is significant to us, it may set some kind of precedent, I'm not sure, with the state, is that we're looking at our population calculations that they have for the city that are incorrect. And they have been incorrect. And what happens in our revenue sharing, part of that's on a per capita. Some of that revenue sharing is on a per capita element to the contract. And Jan's in the process of calculating that amount of money, and we've been talking to the state, and we're probably going to ask to go back at least to 2004, when the real spike started coming in population, to go back and look at that and make amends to us for what we were owed. And that's our idea. I don't know about the Department of Revenue's idea at the end of the day, but I think it may be significant that, you know, if and they haven't, and I will say they've all been pretty cooperative so far, but if not, we'll have a decision of whether we want to pursue it legally. I think the state law allows for corrections of errors. It doesn't tell you how, but it allows for the corrections of the errors. And I'm sure if the Department of Revenue inadvertently gave the city more money over a period of years, that they'd probably be coming looking for it. So would be my guess. So I think that the reverse should apply. So we're looking at that right now. We're working with the city attorneys on it, and we have been undercounted. They, as the process goes, University of Florida does their interim demographics, and University of Florida gets their information on population from meters, electric meters in service. We have a situation where we have FP&L and the city that we have to combine to get that population. FP&L's counts on meters have been off, and Sherry Kamali, who was out sick today, but has been working very hard on this for us. We've gone to FP&L, taken our city map, our service areas, and they have, for example, the Waterstone area. It's all FP&L, most of it above 308 Street. They didn't have a count for us. And below 328 Street, they didn't have a count for us. So they've miscounted our meters by a bunch. And, you know, the devil is in the detail if you look at this stuff. So we're looking at it because we didn't agree with the meter count when we were starting questioning our population figures. But you got to convince UF, and they're listening, and they're getting we're asking FP&L to continue that count. They had us at about 4,500 meters, approximately, somewhere in there. Their count now is at 7,000, and I think they're still counting. So they missed us by a lot. And what they do is they take that meter count, then they take a factor in there for people where you have meters but they're not there, probably 1%, somewhere in there. Then they multiply that by 3.1 people per household, and they come out with their population. That's the formula that I've been advised they use. So based on that, you know, we know right now from the FP&L thing, we were at 57,535 people as of right now. We don't know if they're still counting. So Jan's been on this as well, talking to Department of Revenue reps. So we're on it, and we're going to bring it to a head as quickly as possible. But we should recover some money.
And you should explain to the public why the population numbers matter as far as being an entitlement city and how it equates to dollars, because people are sitting there going, well, what difference does it make? So how it equates to dollars,
other
no
than
dollars.
money, I mean, one item, I don't know if Jan is finished with all those calculations.
It's for the coming fiscal year, it's roughly, from my best estimate, is roughly $750,000. The difference between 43,000 and 53,000
Big number.
in population.
We believe. So that's a big deal.
Which was about equivalent to about 3/4 of a mil.
Yes. Now, the other items that Councilwoman Bell was referring to is that once you get over 50,000, you become entitlement city. We don't really compete, and Rick, jump here if I misspeak on something. We don't have to compete for that CDBG
block grant
like we do. We get it automatically as an entitlement. Secondly, we get a seat on the MPO for being over 50,000. Metropolitan Planning Organization, and that's important to get representation for our city They've never done that before. It's never happened. So I don't know how, like when they incorporated Miami Gardens, maybe they haven't asked yet or realized it, but they should get a seat on the MPO as well. Because they incorporated, they have probably 120,000 people. So these are things that come with that population growth that are significant to the city, and we're fighting to make sure, and I think we've won that battle, and we know we're over 50. We're just trying to get it down to the individual, and here's our population. So we're not far from that 60,000 mark, to be honest with you. We believe 57,535, last count.
And the University of Florida is a certifying institution?
That's correct. You have the name in the University of Florida?
For the Department of Revenue? Not only the name,
there's an organization, there's a unit there that they give it to the state.
I believe it's the Bureau of Economic and Business Research. BEVR is the acronym. Beaver, yeah.
Refer to Beaver.
Okay, good. Any other comments?
Yes, since I made the original motion, I would be willing to amend the motion to go ahead and amend the motion to reflect that we would go forth from here with the rollback rate.
Is the second to that, is okay with it?
Second.
Mr. Hodge?
Was the second.
Yes, second. No, you're clear. She went to the rollback rate, not the,
We're going to be
not minus the 9.9%.
No, the minus the 9.9 from is...
Well, let's just defeat
There's a difference.
Not the rollback rate, I'm sorry.
Let's just defeat this motion and go with...
Or you could just amend the motion to say what you wanted to say.
Right.
Okay.
To reflect the requirements by state law, which is 9%.
So you want 9% less than the rollback rate, which, Jen, I think is 51585.
Right.
5.1585 per thousand. That's what the amendment is.
And I think we need to just plan to tighten the belt. I mean, it's going to be reflected in state law, but, Tallahassee has spoken, it's going to be tough, but I think it's going to...
We'll just hold you responsible, you the budget chair.
I know, I'm wondering, am I crazy here? But, we could have done this with the original motion anyway.
Yeah.
We could have done this with the original motion. So it's the pleasure of the council. It really truly is the pleasure of the council.
The motion to amend in the second?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, now on the amended resolution, please.
Now, motion on the amended resolution. All in favor of the amended resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's the last item on the agenda.
Thank you very much. That concludes the special call meeting. Concludes the special call meeting.